When Carter signed the papers to buy the forgotten hangar on the edge of the junkyard moon, he thought he had just made the worst deal of his life. The place smelled like rust, dust, and oil that hadn't been cleaned since the last war. The roof had holes, the floor was cracked, and the nearby control tower looked like it could fall with a strong wind. But for $1, he didn't expect anything better. He just wanted a place to sleep, maybe fix up some scrap for sale and disappear from the galaxy's noise. But the doors to the hangar wouldn't open at first. The control pad blinked like it was still alive, even though the hangar had been abandoned for decades. Carter cursed, pulled out his toolkit, and forced the old mechanism to move. The doors groaned, metal scraping on metal, and then they slid open just enough for him to slip inside. What he saw froze him. An ancient warship sat right in the center, covered in dust and strange netting that looked like it had been grown, not built. It wasn't human-made. Its hull was shaped like bones with long, sharp fins and a face-like design at the front that made Carter's skin crawl. The ship was massive. Even sitting dead and still, it looked like it could wake up and kill something. He walked closer, flashlight shaking slightly in his hand. There were markings, runes, or letters not in any known language. The kind of ship that shouldn't even be on a moon like this. It looked alive and dead at the same time. Carter whispered to himself, "No way this is junk." He reached out and brushed some dust off the hull. A soft hum echoed through the hangar. Lights flickered. Something powered up. Carter jumped back, heart racing, then he heard it. A sharp metal tapping. Not from the ship. From behind him, he turned fast. Nothing. Silence. But something was in there with him. He could feel it now. Like being watched from the ceiling or the walls, or maybe from inside the ship itself. He swallowed hard, trying to calm his nerves. "Probably a maintenance drone," he muttered. He checked his scanner. No signs of power. No life. Then the air changed. Thick, heavy. Carter's flashlight flickered. In the corner of his eye, something moved fast. Black and tall. He spun, light shaking. But nothing stood there now. Only shadows and dust. Then he saw it, a shape. 8 feet tall, hunched, wrapped in dark armor that didn't reflect light. Its head was smooth, faceless, and its arms too long for its body. It didn't move. Just stared, or seemed to, without eyes. Carter couldn't breathe. He took a step back. The creature didn't follow. Instead, it tilted its head slightly like it was thinking. Then the warship behind Carter lit up. Just one light, deep red like a slow heartbeat. The creature moved, smooth, silent. It didn't attack. It walked toward the ship and stopped just beneath the glowing light. Carter couldn't understand what he was seeing. Was this thing guarding the warship? He backed away slowly until his foot hit an old toolbox. The sound echoed loudly. The creature snapped its head in his direction, and the red light pulsed brighter. Carter held up his hands. "I didn't mean to—" The creature raised one long arm and pointed. Not at him. At the door, Carter understood. He ran. Outside the hangar, he leaned against the wall, heart thumping like a drum. He looked back. The doors were closed again, locked. He had bought that hangar for $1, but something inside it, something ancient, had decided it wasn't his and it was still watching. Carter didn't sleep that night. He sat outside the sealed hangar, staring at the massive doors like they might open again. Every creak of metal in the junkyard made him flinch. The creature inside, whatever it was, hadn't chased him. It hadn't even spoken. But the way it stood under the glowing red light of that alien warship, like a soldier on watch, told Carter one thing very clearly, that ship wasn't dead and it wasn't his. He tried to calm down by telling himself it was some kind of old defense system, maybe a robotic sentry left behind when the war ended. But deep inside, he knew it wasn't a machine. Machines didn't breathe. They didn't tilt their heads slowly like they were remembering, and they didn't point at the door like a person telling you to leave. By morning, Carter had made a decision. He wasn't leaving. He hadn't come this far just to be scared off by something strange. He needed answers. The galaxy had forgotten this place, and he had bought the rights fair and square. The ship was his property now, and if there was a guardian, then maybe there was something inside worth guarding. Something valuable. Carter spent the next day preparing. He set up small sensor pods around the outside of the hangar to monitor movement, power levels, and temperature. He linked them to his datapad. If that thing moved again, he wanted to know. He also ran a trace on the ship's design through every database he could access. But nothing matched. Not human. Not Kalani. not even from the old war records. The structure, materials, and strange runes were completely unknown. That alone made the ship priceless. Even a piece of it could sell for millions on the black market. But Carter wasn't greedy. He just wanted to know what it was, and why it had been hidden. Later that night, the air changed again. Cold, heavy. Carter's datapad beeped. Motion detected. One of the sensors on the back wall of the hangar had triggered. Just one, then silence. He watched the screen for an hour. No more movement. But he felt it. The same pressure in his chest like before, like something massive was awake behind steel and shadow. He stepped closer to the hangar. No lights, no sound. But then, just for a second, a soft humming noise. He pressed his ear to the wall, breathing. Something inside was alive. The next day, Carter tried to enter again. This time, he didn't force the door. He stood in front of the control pad, placed his hand gently on the glass and whispered, "I don't want to take anything. I just want to understand." The control pad blinked. The doors opened halfway. Inside, the air was thick with warmth and dust, like stepping into a forgotten tomb. The warship hadn't moved. Its red eye still glowed gently. But the Guardian was gone. Carter stepped forward slowly. Every footstep echoed too loudly. He circled the ship, scanning it, taking notes. His fingers brushed the runes again. This time they glowed faintly blue beneath his touch. He froze. Then something behind him whispered. A voice, not in words, but in thought. Deep, ancient. It didn't speak his language, but the meaning burned into his mind. Unworthy, yet curious. "Do you seek to awaken it?" Carter spun. No one there. Just the hum of the ship and the soft pulse of energy beneath his fingers. He backed away. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't just a ship. It was alive. And something inside it, or connected to it, could speak without speaking. As he turned to leave, the Guardian appeared again, blocking the door. It didn't move, didn't attack. But this time it reached out its arm and opened its hand. Inside the palm was a small metallic cube etched with the same glowing runes. It offered it to Carter. He didn't know what it meant. But he knew this was no longer about owning a hangar. This was a test, and something had just begun. Carter didn't take the cube right away. He stared at it in the Guardian's open hand. The small metallic object looked harmless, but it pulsed with a strange energy. Blue light traced the runes carved into its sides. His instinct screamed at him to leave it alone. But something else, curiosity, maybe destiny, pulled him closer. Slowly he reached out and took the cube. The moment his fingers closed around it, the red light on the ship pulsed once, not violently, almost like a heartbeat. The Guardian stepped back and disappeared into the darkness without a word, melting into the shadows as if it had never been there. Carter looked down at the cube. It was cold. He could feel it vibrating gently, like a machine alive beneath the surface. Back at his small workstation in the junkyard, Carter examined it under lights and scanners. His tools couldn't cut into it, and every scan failed to read what it was made of. The cube was impossible to open, but the runes kept glowing every time he touched it. He finally tried recording it with a holocam. When he played the footage back, he noticed something strange. The runes shifted when he wasn't looking at them. New patterns, different arrangements. It wasn't just a key or a decoration. The cube was reacting to him. The next night, Carter had a dream. He stood inside a dark void. No stars, no floor, just floating. Before him, the ancient warship hovered, glowing with soft red veins. The Guardian stood beside it, motionless. Then something huge stirred in the shadows. Not seen, but felt. A voice filled his mind, deep, ancient, tired. Words came in broken pieces, but the meaning was clear. The vessel sleeps. The cage holds. But the seal weakens. Will you carry the burden? Carter couldn't answer. He couldn't even move. The pressure in his skull felt like his brain would crack open. The voice continued. You opened the gate. Now choose. He woke up gasping, sweat dripping from his face. The cube lay beside him on the table. Except now it had changed. It had opened. The top part of the cube had slid away, revealing a small crystal inside, floating in the center. It wasn't attached to anything. Just hovering there, glowing softly with a white light. Carter reached toward it. The light flared, a flood of images slammed into his head. Ancient wars. Alien empires collapsing. A creature, not a species but one being, tearing through galaxies. A weapon so powerful it had to be sealed inside a living ship, a guardian bred to watch over it for eternity. And now that seal was weakening. He stumbled back, breathing hard. The cube wasn't just a key. It was a message. A warning, or maybe a choice. He stared at the cube for a long time. If this was true, then the ship in his hangar wasn't a relic. It was a prison. And if the thing inside woke up? He didn't want to think about that. Still, he couldn't walk away. Carter put on his gear, took the cube, and returned to the hangar. The doors opened again, almost like they expected him. The red light was stronger now. The ship's hum louder. He stepped inside. This time he didn't just look at the ship. He approached the center hatch. It stood sealed, smooth with no visible entrance. He held out the cube. The runes on the ship glowed. The cube vibrated. The hatch cracked open just a few inches. Inside, black mist poured out, curling like smoke. Carter stepped back. The Guardian appeared again, standing near the hatch. It didn't stop him. Just watched. The message was clear. Whatever Carter did next would decide everything. Carter stood frozen in front of the cracked hatch, the black mist curling around his boots like it was alive. The warship made no sound, but the air inside the hangar had changed again. It was heavier, tighter, as if something ancient had turned its attention directly on him. The Guardian didn't move. It stood near the hatch like before, watching silently, arms at its sides. Its presence was not threatening now, but not friendly either. It felt like it was waiting. Carter gripped the cube tightly. The small crystal inside was still glowing, pulsing like a heartbeat in sync with the light deep in the ship. He had no plan, no weapon. Just the strange object in his hand and the growing belief that the warship was more than a machine. It was a living prison. He stepped closer to the hatch. The mist reacted. It twisted and lifted like fingers reaching toward him. Cold touched his skin, even through his suit. But instead of pulling him in, it stopped just short of his chest, floating. Then a voice returned, not heard with ears, but felt deep in the mind. This time it was clearer. You carry the seal. You hold the choice, unlock or walk away. The cube pulsed brighter. Behind him, the Guardian raised its head slightly as if listening too. Then it stepped aside. Carter looked at the ship. The hatch was open now, just wide enough to slip through. The mist was no longer dark. It shimmered like stars trapped in fog. It didn't feel evil, but it didn't feel safe either. He moved forward slowly. At the edge of the hatch, the mist parted, allowing him to step inside. The chamber within the ship was larger than it should have been. The walls stretched far, glowing with dim symbols. Floating platforms hovered in silence, and in the center of it all was a structure that looked like a throne. Or maybe a cage. A figure sat there. Carter's heart skipped. It wasn't moving. At first he thought it was a statue, but the shape was too detailed, tall, humanoid but stretched. Its arms were longer, fingers tipped with sharp claws folded neatly over its knees. The skin was black and cracked like stone. Horns curled back from its head, and its face was hidden beneath a smooth mask with no eyes, just a single vertical slit. Chains wrapped around its chest and legs, pulsing with the same blue runes found on the cube. Each link looked grown, not forged, like it was alive. As Carter stepped closer, one of the eyes on the mask flickered open, a single point of red light. It didn't speak, it just breathed. A slow, shuddering breath that made the air ripple. The cube in Carter's hand lit up fully, glowing white-blue now. The runes floated above it in the air, shifting like they were forming a sentence. Carter didn't understand the language, but somehow the meaning burned into his brain again. The seal can hold no longer. The vessel decays. One must bind what sleeps, he staggered back. The ship wasn't just a prison. It was dying. And whatever this thing was, this being of claws and stone and light, had been locked away for longer than Carter could imagine. He wanted to turn and run. He should have. But he remembered the dream, the wars, the destruction this thing had caused. The voices said it could not be killed, only bound, only sealed. But now the seal was weakening and the ship had chosen him. Why? He didn't know. Maybe because he was the first to come near it in centuries. Maybe because he hadn't tried to steal or break anything. But now he was standing before something older than most stars, and it had opened one eye. The red eye on the masked figure didn't blink. It simply watched. Carter couldn't tell if it was seeing him or through him. The single slit glowed brighter now, casting light across the chains wrapped around its body. He didn't dare step any closer. The cube in his hand suddenly turned hot. The floating runes above it spun faster. Carter winced, nearly dropping it. A sound filled the chamber. Not a roar, not a voice, but something ancient, like the howl of forgotten wind through dead worlds. Carter took a step back. The eye followed. Then something deeper moved beneath the floor. A low vibration. The ship itself trembled. Lights flared along the walls, pulsing in rhythm with the figure's breath. The runes along the chains began to flicker, and then Carter heard it again. You touched the lock. Now you carry its burden. Carter shook his head. I didn't mean to open anything, he whispered. I just wanted to know what this was. The voice replied, all who come to this place are tested. You are not first. You are not last. But you are chosen. More images slammed into Carter's mind. Not like before, not just wars and death, but memories. He saw the being in its true form, alive and awake, standing tall in a burning sky. Planets cracked in its wake. Armies fell before it. But it wasn't killing for fun. It was trying to escape. It had been captured, not destroyed. The warship wasn't its weapon. It was its cage. The cube glowed brighter, seal failing. Time short. Choice near. The eye closed again. The ship groaned deeply like it was in pain. Carter stepped back, stumbling out of the chamber. The moment he crossed the hatch, the mist swallowed everything behind him. The door sealed shut. The Guardian was there again, standing just where it always stood. Carter fell to one knee, holding his head. He felt like something had been burned into his brain. His vision blurred. But he was still holding the cube, and now it was silent. He didn't return to his workstation that night. He walked through the junkyard, silent, dazed. The stars above looked different now. Smaller, weaker. Like he had seen what truly lived beyond them, and it wasn't friendly. When he finally reached his bunk, he collapsed. But sleep didn't come. Instead, a signal pinged on his communicator. Not from this moon, from far away. Carter sat up fast. The transmission was encrypted. Old military code. Human encryption from before the fall of the Terran Defense Alliance. No one used that anymore. He decoded it with shaky fingers. Hangar 17 Delta, unauthorized signal detected. Warship signature confirmed. Quarantine team en route. Do not approach. Carter's heart dropped. Someone knew. Before he could respond, another signal came through. This time not human, no code. Just static and then a strange musical tone. Like wind chimes echoing through water. It lasted 3 seconds. Then silence. Then the cube lit up again. The runes changed. And Carter understood. They had felt the eye open. Not just the humans. Not just whatever had built the prison. Something else. Something still hunting it. And now they were coming. Not for Carter. For what was waking inside the ship. Carter paced across the junkyard floor, the cube glowing softly in his palm. He kept looking toward the sky as if he could already see the ships coming. But the stars were calm, quiet, peaceful, a lie. He hadn't told anyone. There was no one to tell. He had bought the hangar alone, moved to this forgotten moon to disappear from the galaxy's noise, but now that quiet had become a trap. The warship he thought was junk was drawing attention from far beyond local space. 2 signals had come, one from old human systems, warning him not to approach the ship. Too late for that. The second was worse. It wasn't a language. It was a presence. A whisper fell through the bones. The moment he heard it, the cube reacted. The runes changed again. They come. Seek the vessel. Seek the cage, Carter now understood. The ship wasn't just hiding the being, it was hiding the lock. And that cube in his hand. It wasn't just a key. It was the trigger. Whoever or whatever had sent that second signal. They weren't trying to protect the prison, they were trying to destroy it. By nightfall, the sensors Carter had placed around the hangar started flashing. A spike in energy, not from inside, but from orbit. He raced to his control tower and patched into the old satellite feeds. Dusty, slow, but still functional. 3 ships, unknown design. Not human. Not any of the standard galactic empires. They didn't match any registry. But they were fast, and they were headed straight for the surface. Carter watched their descent paths. One was landing near the far ridge, another near the crater wall, the third, heading right for the hangar. He didn't know what they were. But they knew exactly where to go. He grabbed his gear. The cube, a power rifle just in case, then ran. The hangar doors opened for him again like they recognized his urgency. The Guardian stood waiting. Carter didn't speak. He held up the cube. They're coming. They're not here to save anything. They want the ship destroyed. The Guardian tilted its head, then moved aside. The hatch to the warship opened again, mist rolling outward. The ship was glowing now, lines of light running through the floor and walls. The air hummed, alive, breathing. Carter stepped inside. The figure in the center hadn't moved, but the chains around it were flickering now, weakening. The cube in Carter's hand lifted on its own, floating toward the center of the chamber. Then the voice returned. You brought the signal. The seal fails. Choice remains, the lights pulsed. The ship shook slightly. Outside, Carter could hear engines landing. Distant thuds. Boots on dirt, he didn't know what to do. Unlock it, seal it, call for help. The cube gave off a sudden shock. Carter dropped to one knee. His vision swam and he saw them, the three alien teams outside. One was placing charges, another was carrying weapons glowing with strange blue flame. The third was carrying a second cube. Carter's eyes widened. It was different from his. A dark cube. Black runes. A breaker. They hadn't come to protect the ship. They had come to destroy the lock. Carter shouted into the air, hoping the ship could hear him. They're going to break the cage. You have to stop them. The Guardian stepped forward. For the first time it moved fast. It walked out of the ship. Toward the invaders, no words, no warning, just silence. Then the ground outside shook. The real war had started. And Carter was standing in the middle of it. Outside the hangar, dust clouds exploded as alien dropships landed with force. The engine screamed, then went silent. 3 teams of unknown warriors stepped onto the dead soil, armored in jagged black suits that shimmered with invisible energy. Their helmets had no eyes, no markings, only glowing slits across the front. Inside the warship, Carter stared at the cube floating in the center of the chamber. It still pulsed with light, but the rhythm had changed, faster now, urgent. He could feel it inside his bones. The Guardian walked out of the warship with heavy, echoing steps. No weapons, no armor upgrades, just its smooth, shadow-colored body and long arms. It stepped through the hangar doors into the night, facing the invaders head-on. The first team opened fire. Carter watched through the hangar's cracked window. Blue energy bolts struck the Guardian's chest, shoulders, and legs, but it didn't fall. It didn't even flinch. With one step, it closed the distance between them and struck the ground with its palm. The earth cracked. The nearest soldier flew backward like a rag doll, hitting the side of the ship with a crunch. Another fired a weapon shaped like a hook. It wrapped around the Guardian's arm. The invader tried to pull it down, but instead the Guardian yanked the entire soldier off the ground and slammed it into the others like a club. Carter turned away, heart racing. These weren't pirates. They weren't scavengers. They had come prepared to destroy an ancient force, but they had underestimated the Guardian. Still, they had brought something else. The second team was moving toward the warship's side panels, placing dark charges along the hull. They didn't seem afraid of the battle. Their mission was clear. Carter ran outside. He didn't know what he could do. But letting them destroy the ship would mean breaking the cage. And that thing inside, the being with one glowing eye and cracks on its chains, would not stay asleep. He reached the second team just as one of the charges was being activated. A soldier turned toward him, raising a weapon. Carter fired first. His shot hit the soldier in the leg. Not fatal, but strong enough to knock the invader down. Another turned to him. But Carter was already behind a support beam. Energy blast tore through the air, scorching the metal. The Guardian appeared again, moving like a shadow. One of the enemy soldiers turned just in time to see a black hand crush his weapon. Another went flying, but they kept coming. That's when Carter saw it. The third team had made it to the control panel of the warship. They held the black cube on a breaker. It wasn't glowing. It pulsed like it was feeding on the ship's energy. Carter shouted, "No, don't use that here." One of the soldiers turned toward him and slammed the black cube into the ground. The moment it touched soil, a shockwave spread in all directions. Carter fell back, ears ringing. The warship screamed, not with metal, with something alive. A deep sound, like a cry from a dying god, filled the sky. The chains inside the ship glowed red. The hatch burst open. Black mist poured out like a storm. The cube Carter carried flared white-hot. Inside his mind, a voice roared, "The seal is broken." Carter stumbled to his feet. The Guardian was gone. Maybe still fighting, maybe destroyed. The ship's lights went wild. Panels cracked. The ground trembled, and then footsteps from inside the ship. Slow, heavy, and not alone. Whatever had slept was now awake. The air around the warship was thick, trembling like the world itself couldn't decide whether to run or bow. The mist pouring from the open hatch had turned darker. No longer a soft fog, but a creeping storm crawling across the floor. The alien soldiers had stopped firing. They stood still now, facing the ship, their weapons lowered. Even they were afraid. Carter stood just outside the hangar, the glowing cube shaking in his hand. The light was fading now, pulsing slower. It had done its job. It had guided him to this moment. But what was about to step out of the warship? Nothing could guide him through that. The sound of footsteps echoed from inside the chamber. Each step was slow, heavy, ancient, not like a machine, not like a soldier, like something sacred and angry. Then the figure appeared. It didn't walk. It glided. Its body was tall, wrapped in dark armor that looked like cracked stone and metal fused together. Smoke moved around its shoulders like a cloak. Horns curled back from its head. Its mask was still in place, smooth and faceless, but now both eyes glowed red. The runes on the chains wrapped around its limbs were no longer holding it. They dangled, broken like decorations on a dead god. It stopped in front of the hangar. The alien soldiers knelt. Not out of worship, out of terror. One of them tried to run. The figure turned its head slightly. That was all it took. The soldier's body cracked mid-step and collapsed like gravity had suddenly tripled just for him. Carter didn't move. He couldn't. The being turned toward him. Both red eyes locked onto him. No mouth, no expression. But Carter felt its voice directly inside his mind. "You brought light to the seal. You unchained the gate." Carter wanted to speak, to say it wasn't on purpose, that he was just trying to understand, but he couldn't lie. He had touched the cube. He had walked inside. He had been chosen. "You carry the mark now." The being stepped closer. Its shadow stretched across the ground, swallowing Carter's feet. Then it raised a hand. Carter expected pain. Instead, it gently touched the cube in his hand. The moment it did, the cube shattered. Dust fell between Carter's fingers. The being didn't move further. It tilted its head as if studying him. "You are not like them." Behind Carter, the invaders finally acted. One of them screamed and fired a heavy energy beam directly at the figure's back. It passed through the air and vanished. Not blocked, erased. The being slowly turned to face them. It raised one arm. Its palm opened. Light exploded outward, not fire, not lasers, just pure pressure. It hit the soldiers like a wave, sending them crashing into walls and scrap metal. Their screams were swallowed by silence. No blood, no flame, just sudden still bodies. Carter fell to his knees, not because of fear, but because he finally understood what the warship was guarding. Not a prisoner, a warning. And now the galaxy had lost its lock. The figure turned to leave. It walked into the desert toward the horizon, as if it already knew where it needed to go next. Carter whispered, "Where are you going?" The voice echoed inside him, to finish what was left undone. Then it was gone, and the warship behind him, its lights faded. The walls cracked. The structure groaned one last time, then collapsed. It had served its purpose. The cage had opened, and the monster had walked free. The next day, the sky above the junkyard moon turned red, not from the sun, from ships, hundreds of them. Carter stood on the edge of the ridge near the ruins of the hangar. The warship was gone now, collapsed inward, melted into black ash and broken metal. The Guardian's body had never been found. The invaders were dust, and the being he had awakened had vanished into the night. But it hadn't gone far. The destruction began within hours. A listening post on the nearby mining colony went silent. A patrol fleet above the gas giant shattered without a distress signal. Whole settlements stopped responding. Now all major factions across the galaxy were watching, and they were afraid. Carter's old comm unit buzzed non-stop. Messages from unknown sources. Military orders, threats, please, someone had leaked the energy spike data. The ancient warship's signature had traveled through old satellites, pinging every listening station. The Terran command wanted him arrested. The Kalani Empire issued a bounty. A dozen small factions wanted to buy his insight. But none of them understood what he had seen. They thought it was a weapon. He knew it was worse. Inside his chest, something had changed. He could feel it. A mark, not on his skin, but deeper. When he closed his eyes, he still saw the red mask. The voice still echoed, "You are not like them." The creature hadn't killed him, it had spared him, or maybe chosen him. Suddenly the sky split again. A fleet of dark ships entered low orbit. Sleek, jagged, and completely silent. Not human, not any known species. Carter backed away from the ridge. These weren't scavengers. These were hunters. Moments later, the lead ship descended. It didn't land. It hovered. A single beam of light scanned the ruins of the hangar. Carter froze. A voice rang from his communicator, cold and direct. "Carter Voss, you are in possession of classified memory patterns. Surrender now. This is your final warning." He didn't respond. Another voice followed. This one calm and clear from a different channel. "Don't listen to them. They want to erase everything. If you hand yourself over, no one will know the truth. We need you alive." Carter stared at the communicator. Dozens of signals were crossing each other. Alliances forming. Old enemies speaking again. But none of them cared about the truth. They only feared what had been released. Above, more ships appeared. One exploded mid-air. No missile. No beam. Just gone. The others scattered instantly. The silence that followed was worse than the explosion. No one claimed responsibility, but Carter knew what it meant. The being was near. Watching, deciding, and still walking. He packed what he could. Data chips, food, a stolen transport core, and left the junkyard behind. The moon would become a battlefield soon. Not because of what was buried there, but because of what had risen from it. Before he climbed into his shuttle, he turned and looked at the empty field one last time. The air shimmered for a moment, and in the distance, he saw a tall figure just standing, watching. Then, it vanished, no ships, no sound, just a whisper in Carter's head. "You carry the memory. Now." He sat in the pilot seat and stared into space. He didn't know where to go, only that something was coming, and every part of the galaxy would soon feel what had been buried for too long. Carter's shuttle drifted far from the junkyard moon now, hiding behind the rings of a dead planet. He kept the engines cold, running silent. Every sensor on board buzzed with alerts from across the star system. Dozens of fleets arriving, scanning, searching. Not for him, for the one walking. They didn't call it a name. They didn't know if it was God or weapon, old enemy or last survivor. Each transmission said something different. Some feared it would destroy all life. Others hoped to use it. A few thought they could kill it, but they were all wrong. Carter knew because he had touched the cube. He had seen the prison. He had heard the voice. The being wasn't just powerful, it was tired and angry, and now free. In the quiet of his small ship, Carter stared at the message carved into the side panel of his console. He hadn't carved it, but it had appeared the day after he left the moon. One link remains. He didn't know what it meant until the dreams returned. Every night, the figure stood closer. Every night the voice was louder. The cage was not metal. The cage was memory. And now Carter understood. The warship hadn't just held the being's body. It had held its mind, its rage, its pain, its history. And when the cube shattered in Carter's hand, all of that had passed into him. He wasn't just a witness anymore. He was the last lock, the final tether. If he died now, the being would fully awaken. Not just walk, not just test, it would remember everything that had been taken. Everything it had lost, and nothing would survive its anger. He could feel the truth inside himself now. The memories weren't fading. They were growing, becoming part of him. He knew alien languages he had never studied. He saw battlefields he had never walked. He remembered faces of people long dead, people from stars no longer in the sky, and somewhere buried in all of it, he felt a second presence watching him, waiting, It wasn't hunting, it was hoping he would understand. Carter stared out the shuttle window at the stars. He could run. He could hide for a few more days. Maybe weeks. But sooner or later, someone would catch him. Or the being would. And the last piece of the prison would break unless he chose differently. He turned to the console. He brought up the navigation system and set a course. Not to escape. To return. Back to the center of the system. Back to where the fleet circled, watching the sky, waiting for something to strike. He would show them something else. He would walk into their cameras, their warships, their questions, and speak the words no one wanted to hear. It's not a weapon. It's a wound. Maybe they'd listen, maybe they wouldn't, but he would speak them anyway because someone had to carry the memory. Someone had to be the last link. As the shuttle broke orbit and entered warp, Carter closed his eyes. He didn't dream this time. He didn't see the being. He didn't feel the heat of old fire or the silence of broken chains. He felt peace for the first time. The warship was gone, the Guardian was gone, but their purpose remained, and he would carry it, not to destroy, but to remind. Because sometimes, the only thing more terrifying than a monster is what created it.